Welcome back to the Live by Heart Today show, number 78. This is a show designed to help you navigate change, uncertainty, and the new world we found ourselves living in. We'll talk a little bit about science, a little bit about how our body works, a little bit about intuition, and we'll talk a lot about transformation.
Streaming from Retro Earth Studio and brought to you by
Learn to play jazz piano like a pro, by a pro, with Jazz Piano Pro Essentials at jazzpianopro.com.
And wearehistorically.com. Conscious Human Apparel. It's time for the next episode of Live by Heart
Today.
Hello, I'm Dawn Spiegelberg, medical intuitive and coherence coach. This show is in our growth series, and today's theme is What Will It Take? With me for today's Heart to Heart is my co-host, Wendy R. Wolf, professional transformation facilitator.
Thanks, Dawn. You know, we've been talking about taking our journey, going on our vision quest. And in this conversation, probably the next two conversations, we're going to be talking about what does it take to make the turn into our vision, into our unique way. So I'm very excited to have Rusty here with us today, and the three of us sharing, particularly him, around this subject.
Hi, Rusty.
Hello, ladies. Thank you again for having me back.
If you haven't seen Rusty before, he is our producer for this show, and we're very grateful to have him. Okay, so I'm going to read some things, and we're going to talk about them if we want to use or whatever. So one thing I have is Vision Quest takes us away from structure and demands of society, takes us out of our usual cadence, and that's wonderful because it gives us space for something new. And on the other side, it's like if we can feel kind of unmoored because we've left a lot of structure behind, which is really great. It lets a river of new come in, and it can feel it can feel uncomfortable. So, do you guys have anything about that?
Yes, and what I have about that is we've been unmoored now for about a year and a half, and people are looking for places to put their feet down. The unmooring is not just that the front of the boat is no longer tied to the dock. It's the front of the boat's no longer tied, and the back of the boat's no longer tied, and the middle of the boat is no longer tied to the dock. And, you know, people are needing a place to throw a rope over.
Right. And so can we help them throw it over something substantial?
Mm-hmm.
Something that matters.
Mm-hmm. You know, choose where you're going to stand, and that will help you.
Yeah.
A mentor used to tell me, and I remember this very well, as if it was yesterday. Be hot or be cold, but damn it, be something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Revelation says that, you know, it has
lukewarm.
Yeah. I'll spew you out of my mouth. I'll spit you. I will throw you up out of my mouth. Just be hot or be cold. Yeah. And there's a lot of can we just own who we are, what we're about? But where is the certainty coming from? Where is the call coming from? Like, I feel like that's the important part. What I do care is that they can stand.
And you're making a good point. So where's the autonomy?
It's a choice, and there are consequences.
Yes.
And that's how it always is. That's how it is. We make choices, and there are consequences. Ones we like and ones we don't. This is all just human. This is all human stuff.
Yeah, I used to think consequences. Whenever I heard consequences, immediately had a negative connotation to it. But what I realized is consequence is just a neutral word. It's just my experience with them was negative.
Not all the time. You just maybe didn't notice when it was positive.
Right.
Oh, I
But
did
it's
that and I
just
lived.
consecutive sequences of events that will occur in the event that you do this one certain thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was just, oh, so there's positive consequences. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And most of the consequences we get are positive. We keep living. The people we love keep living. We keep learning. Like most of the consequences are positive, I would say.
Yeah. They need a rock to stand on. What's that rock? Because there's way too much fear.
There's way too much fear. Yeah. And well, I mean, my answer is Jesus' answer, which is the rock is our spiritual information from the divine. And I mean, that's what he talks about.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm all about. But it really does, it's a whole different context to live from than the winds of the news or the society or the fear of the day.
I say this frequently, but I don't know that it lands. And that is, our brain is the organ that requires stimulation. It desires to see, it desires to taste, it desires to hear and to receive stimulus. And we can get overcome by that desire for the external if we are not developing the vertical, the spiritual.
Yes.
So what's missing in people's lives? What's their spiritual connection? Well, people don't know that.
I don't know that. Another way to talk about this is live by heart. I mean, it's all about congruence and coherence, alignment. It's all the same stuff. It's just maybe the heat keeps getting turned up, which is not a bad thing.
The same boiling water that hardens the egg softens the carrot.
Yeah, I mean, our society, we have so much leisure time. We have so much wealth. We have so much health. We have so much longevity, relatively to the millennia.
I'm going to interject here because I don't know if this is on topic or off topic. This is where, if you're expecting someone else to take care of you and make you feel better and provide you with security, then you're building your foundation on sandy ground. What occurs to me after Vision Quest and Why Fly is that all of this is a hero's journey, and it's all about getting back to center. So part of me just kind of go, my foundation is in the truth. Like, you tell me something, I'm going to pick at it, make sure it sits and resonates with me.
How do we keep our foundation in the truth? Keeping our foundation in the truth and staying aligned with the truth.
On the deep truth, we do create our own lives and we have shared reality. But what I'm interested in is the spiritual truth. Like, so there's the shared reality in which there's like scientific blah, 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 blah. But that's not what I'm really interested in talking about. There's a lot of people talking about that. What I want to talk about is the spiritual truth, where we find our way from within. We find it vertical, not horizontal. We find it in, not out.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to focus on that, because the in comes vertically and then we live it outwardly. And the opposite is happening, right? People are pulling it in and then pushing outward vertically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is like, resistance, is God really here? Can I really be spiritually safe? Can I really know for myself truth? That's all the doubt and the questioning.
Yeah. And, in theology, by the way, they call that the problem of evil. And a lot of people lose their faith over the problem of evil. A lot of people. It's like this thing I don't like is happening. And therefore there is no God.
Right.
It's very common. And what I would say is that there isn't a God that you had defined.
Yeah.
Your version of God is dying, but there's a new version available if you want it, and that takes a journey. What do you say, Rusty? Look at that face. It's awesome.
Oh,
I
well,
see you like thinking.
yeah, because I seriously, I had to abolish the ideas of the God that I had and then recreate the relationship. And then I got to create the terms. And so it basically boiled down to, okay, my only criteria is that God is loving and caring. So if I believe in a God that's loving and caring, does it mean he's mean or vengeful or spiteful or psychopathic, psychotic? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was the version I had where I had to somehow appease and make sacrifices to please a vengeful God. It was all bargaining.
Because you were living a vengeful life. And that's what you believed God to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. My wondering question, having heard the last time we talked, having heard your really great story, is did your concept of the divine morph before you asked for a whole different life and got it?
Yeah.
It did?
Yeah. Maybe I haven't shared this, but there was one point in time where my sponsor said, okay, get on your knees, in the morning, ask for help to stay sober. At the end of the day, get on your knees and thank him. And so I was going through the motions of doing that. And then we got off the phone and he said, I said, well, I'm going to bed. He goes, well, did you get on your knees and thank God yet for keeping you sober? And I went, no. He goes, well, go do it. So I hang up, I get down on my knees and I sat there and I was like, I really don't want to fucking do this. Like, this is just pointless. This is ridiculous. And then I was on my knees, elbows on the mattress, whatever, like this. And I just said,
like a third grader.
Exactly. And I said,
I see Calvin and Hobbes.
Exactly. And I went, damn it, God, I'm so pissed off at you. And then I hear about time. Like right behind me, to a point where I leaped up to my feet and turned around because I thought my roommate had walked into the room, and boy was I pissed. I thought he, violated my trust here, So I turned around, there's nobody there. And I'm like this, and then I fell back to my knees and I just started crying. And I realized, like, because that was real. That was like, God was like, it's about time. Like, and God wasn't mad that I was mad. Like, it was just like a feeling, like, it's okay to be mad at God, like, it's okay.
Let's get with the truth. You got with the truth. Let's be what that is.
And then after that, that was the breakthrough. That was the starting point. I just put it that way. That was the demo. That was the deconstruction, is that, I'm pissed off at God. And I didn't want to admit it, because then if I admit I'm mad at God, God will only get even angrier, So I got to appease this vengeful God. Yeah, don't let him know you're mad. So there was all that cover up and hurt, shame, with the anger.
And it's so much resistance there.
Oh, I said defiance. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reminded of the very first edict of the Ten Commandments, which is Don't put any other gods before me. In this list of defiance and resistance and anger, that's all putting those things before God. That's putting those things between you and God. So they
And
become your
addiction.
God.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously addiction.
Yeah, and for some people, what is their God?
Money, money, money. Money,
Right? The
money.
big three: money, sex, rock and roll.
Fame and fortune. Yep.
There's also love. Love. Yeah, I really, really, really love what you said. And I feel like it's very relatable.
Another thing that came to mind is being unreasonable. Meaning you don't need to search for a reason. You don't have to have a reason, because most of the time we're looking for reasons and talking ourselves out. And so when I'm being reasonable, it's because I'm full of reasons. And when I'm unreasonable,
Whoa.
yeah, you're being reasonable. Like it sometimes you just have to be unreasonable. Like I don't have to have a reason. I don't have to have an explanation. I don't have to prove anything to anybody anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't need permission.
So this is all precursors to what you shared in your vision quest and the incredible, miraculous life you've been living. All the stuff you learned before then.
Yeah. Well, being unreasonable, I learned through Landmark. That's kind of a landmark
That's
thing.
after, yeah. But you were unreasonable. You were willing to leave, go, do, say, throw yourself out into the seeming void.
Yeah, I that's how I caught on to that unreasonable. Like, oh, I've been unreasonable.
You've been crazy unreasonable. What happened before from the last show? Because people are just like, that must be nice. You know, people are like, must be nice. But what really, really freaking happened is that you hit bottom and you splatted and you were willing to put yourself in the structure of the 12 steps. You were willing to do all these things that didn't make any sense and you hated, until it finally started to make sense. And it took a really long time.
Two things. One was order to get, when I say I hit my bottom, it was suicidal depression. And I really believe what turned me around in the 12-step program was the promises from the 9th step, where you'll be able to handle situations which used to baffle you, which that's my favorite promise. Like, I want that. Intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. And I went,
and you did.
That's what I want. I want
and that's what you got.
And I've been working towards that. I was almost said I've been striving towards that, but it's not been any strife, because when I'm in it, I just get sucked into. I mean, it's just like, yeah. I do now know how to handle. That's the calm during the storm. I was talking about calm during the storm, and that's the intuitive knowing, that I'm okay. This is going to work out.
Right.
You know.
So I would say that it seems like you're living that promise, but I heard you say you're still living into that promise. So which is it, or both?
Okay, I don't know how I said it, but I feel like it's a living promise. As long as I keep that promise just keeps coming true.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when cucumber turns into a pickle, it can't go back. Like, I intuitively know now. So it kind of spoils the victimhood of it.
Right. You're not at the mercy of it anymore.
Yeah.
And you also know the negative consequences.
Right. That's the same way with my intuitive knowing. Whenever I feel confused or lost or whatever, oh, okay, I'm not tapping into why am I overlooking here? Let's take a moment, take a deep breath. Let's connect. Let's tap in. Let's connect with nature. Let's go for a walk. So I don't get stuck in the confusion. That's how I intuitively know how to intuitively know.
Right. And you just keep walking out in the seeming void and trusting that you'll find the rock beneath. I keep saying this, but it seems relevant.
Yeah.
You keep doing it and it keeps working. So your trust has developed.
Well, I know when it's not working.
Still falling.
That's,
Yeah.
because keeping the engine primed, it takes a lot less effort, but I know when to prime it. Some people call them downloads or getting hits. I call them future glimpses. I get a future glimpse. Oh, I get a little flash of a possible future I could potentially live into. Oh, this is a possibility. Oh, if I went this way, right? And so there comes that time where I have to take that time out and that breather to be able to have that glimpse of like, okay, where to from here? Okay, let me kind of plot this out. Because sometimes I am just marching blindly, and to the point where I hit a dead end. I go, okay, sometimes it's not always turn around. Sometimes it's go up. Sometimes it's go down.
Right. Through. So it's like a little mini vision quest. You're looking for the vision. You're looking for the way along the way.
All last year, it was a meandering path. Which, no straight lines here.
No straight lines here. But gosh, what a year. It's amazing.
Let's take a short break.
Hello, my name is Wendy from Graceful Soul Academy with our active meditation play shops. They're a chance to experience a comfortable, safe, nurturing space for you to open to new possibilities within yourself. In October, we are focusing on soul integrity. That might sound a little intense, but really, what does that mean? How does that help? Some things it means are align with the truth of your own soul. Savor your spiritual connection. Live a life that makes sense to you. Please come as my guest, and I look forward to playing with you soon.
Raise your vibration and energize your life with specialized Fibonacci tuning forks that deepen meditations and empower self-healing. Get your vibrational sound tools for personal enhancement at energybodytuners.com.
As a posture therapist, I'm qualified to pinpoint the cause of physical symptoms by realigning the body, and then it's the body that heals itself. When you are in a state of overwhelm, your mind is out of alignment with your values. As a coherence coach, I'm astute enough to identify the root causes and show you how to realign with what you value, and your mind can be whole. You can live by heart today.
Hi, I'm Darius Wilrich. I instruct an online video course that teaches anyone how to play jazz piano like a pro with my proven step-by-step system that makes it simple to learn. Jazz Piano Pro Essentials. Enroll today at jazzpianopro.com and download my free quick start guide.
I just want to mention, there's that concept of you can't boil water at 32 degrees. Are you familiar with that, Rusty?
That's the first time I heard it.
So the temperature of boiling water is, like
212 or something.
Yeah, it's higher
you can't
up.
boil water 32.
So if you have a pot and you're in the Arctic, right, and it's 32 degrees, you have to do a lot of work to get that water to boil. It takes a lot of energy. It takes, right, the environment isn't conducive to boiling that water. And that's what AA did for you. It changed the environment in which your alcoholism worked, right?
Really
so
good.
It took you out of that environment so that you could boil instead of being stuck, frozen at 32 degrees, because that was the environment you're in.
Got it.
So what
That's a really clear visual.
Isn't it
really
amazing?
good.
So what people are struggling with is this thing that you can't solve the problem with the thinking. by staying in the thinking that created the problem.
Right.
You got to get your pot of water out of 32 degrees, and then it becomes easier to boil. It takes less effort. And that's what you're talking about. Like, you can't go back.
Right.
And that's one thing with the intuitive knowing, though, is sometimes like I get that future glimpse, I get that hit, I get that download, and I won't know what it means, but it'll kind of spur me on to keep searching, keep digging. You know, like I get a kind of a nudge or a point in the general direction.
Mhm.
And so taking a time out and stop to check in and ground myself it's just like there's nothing wrong with calling a timeout. It's like timeout, okay, take a breather, regroup, okay, time back, but don't forget to call back, time back in. Sometimes go on a permanent timeout and never get back in the game.
Mhm.
One thing that I'm reminded of, and Wendy, I keep going back to this, I keep noticing it in my life, is when you were talking about suffering. And suffering is a real thing.
Yeah, it hurts.
And our concept and belief of God while we're suffering is the way God is for us, right? That's what we believe God is. And when we abolish it, that relationship and belief we created during the suffering, and how do we do that? We either stop suffering, and that gives us a different belief in God, or we have a shift in our belief in God, and then we stop suffering.
Mhm.
So we can get there either way. And for some people, it's easier to change their belief in God, and then they see they don't have to suffer. Some people get out of their suffering and then change a belief in God.
Mhm. And for me, it took extreme pressure of suffering to be willing to change my belief in God. And then
You're a Taurus,
I'm a Taurus.
right?
And
You can
then so
handle a
much could
lot of
come.
shit.
Oh my God. Yeah. I was just like, I'm very, what's it called? Stubborn. So, but like, I finally was broken on that, and I could let go. And then my understanding of the divine started to change and change and change and change and change.
Right.
And out of that came a noticing of suffering every single time. And what we've been talking about the last while is the willingness to let go, because that's not how life has to be. That's not how the divine is. So for me, it took a transition time.
So I want to validate something important. And that is the strength that you have to have endured that level and degree of suffering is the same strength that you have available to you to enjoy all the blessings and move forward and stand in your own, right?
Yes.
Like, to understand the truth of just how much suffering you were able to go through
Live through
before
somehow.
it finally destroyed you, which obviously was necessary, right?
Well, for me, it was. It's not necessary, but for me, it was, because I wouldn't let go. I had a concept of the divine, and I wasn't letting go. And somehow I got the grace to let go before I actually died. Hooray. But yes, and lately I've been in such bliss. I'm like living the life of my dreams. Like, objectively, there's lots of issues. There's it's not perfect looking, but my life is bliss so often.
I want us to talk about this.
Bliss in an imperfect life.
That's a part of it. Russ talking about how much he was resisting, right? He was an alcoholic and he was resisting AA because, if you're an alcoholic, what's your God?
My best friend's in a bottle. Gotta let them out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And thou shalt put no other gods before me, right? So struggling,
Right.
suffering destroys you. Alcoholism destroys you.
Can I say that there's also two forms of suffering?
Let's hear it.
And I think that these two forms are probably just isolated to human species, is that there's actual physical suffering, that we're experiencing suffering,
Pain.
pain, and then there's perceived suffering.
Yeah. That's what we're talking about with the suffering.
Yeah. So and often that's worse than the actual suffering.
Yeah.
Is we don't even have to be going through it. We just have to imagine what wow, we could be going through this. Like, and so that's really, we start living in that future tripping of being in the suffering, that, and then we start experiencing that suffering in the present when we haven't even actually what is that? What's that called? Time skipping or something, where we're not even at the point like, oh, okay, but the same thing could be held for joy too. Like, hey, Christmas is around the corner and the kids already start getting excited. My dog gets fed at 1 o'clock. At 12:30, it already knows. Like it's living in bliss because it knows I'm getting some food. Right. So I think that's the power of perception that the human species has.
Anticipation. It's making me wait.
Yeah, we can not only perceive what's going to happen, but sometimes we can't let go of how we believe it's going to happen. And it doesn't align with the truth of what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
That made any sense?
So for me, I could be wrong, but for me, pain and perceived suffering that's pain is physical. Suffering that's perceived is spiritual.
That's a good way of putting it.
Soul, I would say soul.
Soul, thank you.
Because it becomes that belief symptom.
Yep.
Yeah. And from my perspective, it happens out of time.
Mm-hmm.
It happens, it's like a story and emotions or feelings and like all this stuff in our soul that is about the future, about now, and about the past, and or that's suffering. And then there's the actual pain that actually happens. Fortunately, not as often as we fear it. We get ourselves in big trouble. Jesus talked about this, of course. He's just like, each day has enough evil of its own, enough missing the mark of its own.
Mm-hmm.
We, if we stay here, we can handle it. But we can't handle tomorrow.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you, Russ. Thanks to everyone for being with us today. If you're watching, please let us know. We want to hear from you. Tell us what's on your heart by leaving us a comment below. For more information about how you can live by heart, please go to livebyhearttoday.com. Like and follow this page and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our programs. We're here every week, Thursdays at 4:44 Pacific. From our heart to yours, we're creating a better tomorrow because we live by heart today.
And that concludes this portion of
Live by Heart Today!
Thank you for watching. View more episodes on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's give a shout out to our sponsors. Shop online at wearehistorically.com. Conscious Human Apparel.
Hi, I'm Darius Wilrich. I'll teach you everything you need to know about playing jazz piano like a pro with my 12-week online video course and downloadable guidebook, Jazz Piano Pro Essentials. Enroll today at jazzpianopro.com.
Thank you for joining us. Have a happy always.
Subscribe to our show to be notified of future episodes.